It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on a budget, on my quest out brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description right below, so I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out and doing all that YouTube stuff. I'd appreciate it. But today, keeping that Final Fantasy going, and today we're talking about Tifa Lockhart, the mono green version of Tifa from the main set. A 2-mana 1/2 human monk with trample. It says whenever a land comes in, we just double Tifa's power until end of turn. Tifa, it's going to be a fun landfall threat. We're playing mono green landfall. There's a lot of other landfall payoffs in the deck, but truthfully, we're going to try to build up Tifa so that she can hopefully just one-shot people as lands come in and become a real threat to our opponents. And if Tifa ever gets removed, we're still, or too expensive, we're still going to just try to have enough landfall that we could still profit and potentially win the game, even if Tifa gets hated out of the game. But I'll say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all our videos just a little bit early, consider checking that out down below. But all right, I think one of the first keys to talk about is finding a way to get multiple land drops per turn. Right, Tifa's going to double her power every time a land comes in, meaning that I think turns where we can play 1 or 2 lands, especially the later the game goes, as we can get our bigger and bigger, it's just going to get better. You've got more classic things like Sky Shard Claim, which just puts in 2 forests, again, 2 doubles. You have things like Awaken the Woods that makes a bunch of forest creature tokens, doubling Tifa that many times. Traverse the Outlands just gets a X basic lands, where X is the greatest power among creatures we control, and gets them in tapped. Again, remember that these are not just going to be doubling Tifa. There's going to be triggering all of our other landfall things, especially these big things that can get a bunch of them at once and really letting our deck shine. Got things like Entist Restoration and Harrow that can just go get 2 or 3 lands with Restoration onto the battlefield. And then we have basic things like Exploration, lets us play an additional land in each of our turns. Again, making sure that we can get multiple lands down per turn for Tifa's ability. But again, the emphasis is that it's not just about Tifa. I mean, yes, we want Tifa to work the way she wants to work, but I think we also have to prepare for what happens when Tifa inevitably gets hated off the board, and we have to find a way to have our deck function otherwise. And we're just going to add a bunch of what makes Green Landfall so good. Green Warden doubles all triggered abilities that would happen if a land comes in. And let's play land from our graveyards. Really nice. We can get those lands like Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse that sacrifice to go get another land, so we can do those double land triggers again. Shaya turns all of our non-token creatures into lands, meaning any non-token creature that comes in is going to be a landfall trigger, which is pretty huge. Avenger of Zendikar is a classic landfall win con. Whenever it comes in, you make a plant for each land you control, and whenever a land comes in, you put a counter on each plant, grow you that army of plants, and it could become a real threat. Bristly Bill can put counters on creatures when lands come in, and then double the amount of counters on each creature. I think the goal here is to get counters on Tifa, right? Because 2 is going to double better twice, or say 4 is going to, 3 is going to double better twice than 2, right? The better her power is, the better it can double, the better it's going to get. And then you can start doubling the amount of counters on Tifa, right, as the game gets into the mid-range. Mossborn Hydra, again, just doubles the number of counters on it whenever a land comes in, becoming a nice threat. Rampaging Bailiff is one of a couple creatures in our deck that makes a token whenever a land comes in, can get us to grow a little bit wide. Sox Chocobo is a example of a couple of the cards in our deck that just have landfall, put a counter on this creature, so they can grow and they can become threats as well. Scythecat Cub actually puts a counter on any creature we want when a land comes in, but if it's the second time it goes off, we double the number of counters on the creatures. Again, really great for Tifa as we grow her or any other creature we have. Tireless Treasure gets us a food or a treasure whenever a land comes in, so whether we need the life gain or the mana. Really helps us cover that spread. Traveling Chocobo is going to double the abilities of a land coming in, which is again huge for Tifa, as well as it lets us play lands off the top if we need to. And then we've got some other pieces. Both Adventuring Gear and Skyclave Pickaxes are equipment that say whenever a land comes in, that creature gets +2/+2 till end of turn. So again, both of these are pretty easy to equip. Adventuring Gear just costs 1, and Skyclave can auto-attach to a creature when it comes in, and then can give Tifa buff. Remember that all landfall abilities are triggered abilities, which means you get to decide what order they go off in. So if I have a pickaxe attached to Tifa and I put a land in, it makes a lot more sense to have the pickaxe go off first, right? Giving me that +2/+2, and then doubling Tifa's power. So you can see, right, where you can really take advantage of some of these. And then we have a suite of 3 different enchantments that just put a counter on a creature whenever a land comes in. Again, similar thought process. Put the counters on Tifa, then double, allowing her power to be higher, and then her base power, right, is sorry, not her base, but her normal power is going to grow, right, to double around and make even better. But I think we want to care about Tifa again. She's our commander, and she's probably one of the best things we have to end games. And there's a lot of things we can do. We can do something like scale up, making her a 6/4, right? Then 1 land drop's going to make her a 12/4, right? Already a great place to start. So you'll see scale up talked a lot about in videos on how to, knock somebody out early in a game of Commander. Will the Sultai just gives a creature X +1/+1 counters X number of lands we control and giving it trample. So this could potentially in the mid to late game just make Tifa really huge. Aspect to Hydra gives a creature +X/+X on the turn where X is your devotion to green, potentially giving Tifa again a nice buff if needed. Overprotect can not only protect Tifa, giving it hexproof and indestructible, but also getting +3/+3 trample. Primal Bellow just gives +1/+1 for each forest you control. Remember, we don't need Primal Bellow to give trample because Tifa already has trample. And so that's the killer difference. You have things like Snakeskin Veil, Tameo Safekeeping, Tybar Stan, these hopefully 1 mana green spells that can just give her indestructible or hexproof just to really protect her from single target removal. Then you have something like Tifa's Limit Break that for 3 mana can just double her power and toughness on a turn, or for 8 mana can triple her power and toughness on a turn. Again, there's really interesting spells that are going to help Tifa at the right time, whether they be at sorcery speed or instant speed. Black Blade just giving +1/+1 for each land we control, right? A pretty classic equipment, especially in these landfall go a lot of lands decks. Brotherhood Regalia can stop Tifa from being blocked and give her Ward 2, which I think is a really nice piece for just 3 mana, 2 to get it down and 1 to equip it. Power Fist, right? Trampling whenever she hits a player, putting them any counters on it. This is also really nice for pretty much every other creature in our deck because you then give them trample, and now they can grow even bigger, right, as they hit in combat. Staff of Titania is a pretty interesting card. Gives +X/+X for X number of forests you controls. I don't know that we're playing many non-basic lands that aren't forests, except things like Evolving Wild and those kind of things. But it says whenever the equipped creature attacks, you make a forest dryad land creature token. So if this is on Tifa and Tifa attacks, you're making another land doubling before you even get to blockers for you and get the damage, which is pretty huge. Bear Umber can protect Tifa, giving that totem armor, giving that protection. And then you have something like Blanchwood armor, just +1/+1 for each forest you can start. You can start to see where we could take advantage of more than just her power doubling when a land comes in. We can pay off all the stuff that we have. But I think the last thing we can do is just use things like Zope and Drell and Unnatural Growth just to double all of our creatures' power and toughness at each combat. Again, really good offensively, really good defensively, and could be the difference between Tifa knocking someone out with commander damage or not, right? I think there's a huge difference between, a 10 power Tifa and a 20 power Tifa, right? You can start to see the big difference between those. And I think these are the kind of cards that could be those last piece to really help make sure we can close a game out. But I said it before on the show, and I'll say it again, no deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at Tifa. And going into testing, I think there's some things we want to consider. Do we want more of the Umbras, these auras that protect a creature and will go away instead of the creature being destroyed? Does that make sense for Tifa, especially something like Lion Umbra that can give it vigilance and reach? And there's a couple other green Umbras that we could choose from. And my other thought was something like Basilisk Collar. It may look odd, but remember that Lifelink's a very positive ability, right? Gaining us life back as we're dealing damage. And Death Touch works really well with Trample, because remember, when you have Death Touch and Trample, Death Touch means you only have to deal 1 damage to a creature to destroy it, and you trample automatically for the rest, meaning Tifa could deal a lot more damage with something like Basilisk Collar on it. And then we have something like Nissa, who shakes the world, who can double up all the mana our forests get. You're allowed to untap forests and make them creatures, but mainly you get to untap them, use them again. And then our -8 can just go get every land out of your deck if you want it to, a bunch of all the forests out of your deck if you wanted to. I really like this, and I really wanted to put it in. I just had a tough time finding a slot for it because I really wanted to make sure we had a lot of redundancy, especially if we lost Tifa. Wanted to make sure we had enough left in our deck to still accomplish what we want to do, even without her. Well, let's do what we love to do on the channel the most and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to show off all our best plays, but it's to get in some gameplay scenarios and understand what are we looking for in our hands and how are we going to look to set our game up. It's a really odd land, a 5-lander with a Blanchwood armor and a Skyclave pickaxe. But the truth is we have 2 lands that are going to be able to go search for other lands, which means double land drops in a turn, right, which is huge. And we have things that are just going to make Tifa better. So obviously we don't want to use those, right? We don't want to use those searchers until Tifa's down, right? There's no point in using them yet. So turn 3, we get another one in Fabled Passage. So turn 3 here presents the first opportunity where we could potentially have some fun. If I play the pickaxe and then play one of my searchers, this is a Tifa that goes from a 1-2 to a 3-4 and then doubles to a 6-4. I crack this, the forest comes in, she becomes an 8-6, doubled to a 16-6 this turn with trample. So there's, there's that route. Or you go forest into the Blanchwood, right? So I certainly think the pickaxe makes more sense. There is the argument, do you play the Shire Terrace and not crack it and wait till the next turn where you could double again, right? Crack 2 of them and get more drops, right? I think that just comes down truthfully to your preference. I think at the end of the day, you kind of got to decide, does doming someone for 16 on turn 3 seem fun to you? I mean, if she has tramples, if they have a blocker, you're probably just going to create a rough scenario. My problem, if you don't go for this line, is how are we going to protect Tifa? Because she's now just sitting here waiting to get removed. I think if you're playing this deck in a play group where you play a lot, people are going to know exactly what your deck's trying to do. And I'll warn you that if someone's ingrained enough in the Magic community, they're going to know what this deck's trying to do. This is all over. It's been all over the internet, right, on what it wants to do. I could see going Fabled Passage and not, like, going one of these 3 lands and not cracking it. So then you're looking at a 3, a 6, 6-4 Tifa and just attack. If you want to wait the turn and try to, again, what would be lethal on somebody, we said we could get Tifa to 16. So that means we would be able to get Tifa to a lethal commander damage amount. And maybe it makes more sense, right, to go, Fabled Passage. Now we're at a 3-4, 6-4, crack the Fabled Passage, forest comes in, 8-6, 16-6, crack the Promising Vein, 18-8, 36-8 with trample, and I think we have, 3 mana up, so we could go for something like Garruk's Uprising. We could, hold up a Beast Within. If somebody tries to, do something fancy, we could, there's other things we can do. But, like, truthfully, here's one knockout we have on a player on turn 4. And then next turn, we go for something like the Shire Terrace that we can crack, and you put the Blanchwood armor on to give her that buff, right? I think we're starting to get there. The only thing I'm worried about is, do we have enough to finish it? I thought something that turn was go for a Nature's Rhythm for something like Sox Chocobo or something. Just get another creature in we can start growing, so that if they remove Tifa, we're not just completely wasted away on board. My other thought there is then if somebody removes this, that Chocobo is a great target for Blanchwood armor. The only problem with the Chocobo, of course, is it doesn't have trample, and this doesn't give trample. We'd have to rely on that Garruk's Uprising since, Tifa has trample. But this was going to come in tapped off either the Vein or the Terrace no matter what. Nature's Rhythm could be a fun target for something like Bristly Bill, or something like Scythe Cat Cub if you wanted to start, getting another threat in. But let's say that no one removed Tifa that turn. I would probably just get something like Garrick's Uprising in and draw just to be safe. Now I have trample on a future creature if I need it. Right, I need a mana to crack the Shire Terrace, right? So I can't. If nobody's removed Tifa, I need to hold up Heroic Intervention, right? Play the Terrace again. 3-4, 6-4. Crack the Terrace is my thought. 8-6, 16, because it comes in tap, so I've got 4 mana. I was gonna say you could Blanchwood, but you're really running the risk of getting yourself hurt, right? Because of the leaving it open. I think you kind of have to Heroic Intervention and then just take the 16 on somebody. Maybe if you chose, attack that player you domed for 8, right, the first time or something. Hold up the heroic, and then even on this turn, even with the heroic held up, you could go forest 3-4, 6-4. Blanchwood 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. What could we natures with them for 4 that would be beneficial to us? I thought it was a Shia to double, but a Shia would be 5, so we'd be a little bit off. But I think you could start to see we're going to be a little flash in the panty if all we see is Tifa, because that's what we have. But I think Rhythm could be good to go get, something that can start the rest of our game plan for Landfall going. Something that makes tokens like that could be a Scoot Swarm play, something like that. There's a lot of options there. But I think also you want something to put maybe the pickaxe goes back on something. I think that's the only downside of Blanchwood armor is that it's an aura, right? So if Tifa goes, so does the armor. But hey, I mean, there's a lot of ways we can look at this game. We have removal, we have a search, we have protection. We saw some of the key pieces. Maybe my mechanics of when to search for what, right, doesn't make the right sense, and maybe we can get better as we play more games with that. Let's get into playtest number 2, keeping a 3-lander with scale ups. There's that big thing with Tifa, right? That first land drop making her a 12-4, right? So just a really big thing. Roaring Earth to put the counters on. Will of the Sultai we talked about, and then there's Loot. Play an additional land in each of your turns, and then can start digging off the top. So turn 1 here, obviously nothing we can do. No target for scale up. Turn 2, I like Tifa, right? So now turn 3, the question is what makes the most sense. If I can scale up plus pickaxe. If I scale up pickaxe land, scale up makes her a 6-4. The land coming in makes her an 8-6, doubling to 16. And I have 1 mana left, and there's nothing I can do with it. Right. But I mean, that would be a pretty hard hit at 16 on turn 3, right? This is just going to show you you can do some wonky things. Or you wait for I could wait for the bulk of this, go what? Roaring Earth, put the forest in, put a counter on Tifa, then put the pickaxe on her and set this up for next turn. Trying to go deep that way, maybe. Because next turn she'd have a counter on her, being a 7-5. Maybe we can get the counter. Maybe we can get a better double that way. Just trying to think of what makes the most sense. Because you can't knock somebody out, right, at 16, right, with obviously commander image being 21. But 16 could be a good way to really start hitting somebody hard, right? Let's say I do choose to go all in. I choose to go all in. Let's say I don't. Let's say I go Roaring Earth, Forest, get the counter on Tifa, and put the pickaxe in. Let's say I try to wait the turn to see what happens. Well, that's even better because now I'm guaranteed 2 land drops. So if I scale up here, 7-5, play the Brokers, 9-7, doubled 18, go get the Forest, 20? like 29 and then double. So you just plus the counter. So you probably just knock somebody out this turn with trample on turn 4, right? Just because of that interaction. And then if nobody, right, has any response to Tifa, now ideally we don't have the land, which kind of stings. But maybe it's something like Bear Umbra, right, to protect her even more. That's a only a 4/5 Tifa, but I think you don't mind that to set up a chance to untap. You could get the Kazandu in. You could get something like Luden. We could try to Blanchwood Tifa, but I'm just kind of worried that now she's going to get removed. I guess although you have the protection of the Bear Umbra, but I think this is where this deck you kind of got to figure out where's the what are you going to do in the games where you can only truthfully like maybe knock one person out and you may not have the landfall triggers to knock somebody else out, and maybe it's that I'm not playing enough lands. Maybe I need to play more of these Evolving Wilds Terramorphic style lands, as many as we can. Maybe that's a logical response to that, and I think that's a fair criticism of the deck if I were honest. Like I like the idea of Blanchwooding here. Like let's say I do that. Let's say I attack with her and then I turn to, and then main 2 I just Blanchwood Tifa and just say let's see what happens. Now we untap. I'm 1 mana short of Traverse the Outlands. Unfortunately, I mean that would be plenty enough, right, to just knock somebody else out with Tifa, right? Because she's a 6, 7, 8. I mean, really, we'd only need like 1 land drop to like really do well here. I guess if nothing else, you drop the Kazandu, attack, maybe put somebody like Loot down with the mana main 2, right? And then we just need a turn where we get 1 land, and of course we draw another +1/+1 enchantment. Kind of an odd draw there, but I think 1 more land on this turn. Kazandu land bringing us up to 4. So that's 5, 7, 9, 13 doubled, right? And you can see there. So just either the draw or the line not being right on that one, I think, is what I'm thinking in my head. Here we're keeping a 4-lander with Nature's Rhythm again. There's the Kazandu, and there's Bayless to give us something to work our way up to. So, there we draw Scythe Cat Club. I think I'm willing to just get Tifa down first, right? And then here, play the Cub, play the land, put the counter on Tifa. So 2/4, double to 4/4, take the attack, right? We don't have anything for 1 mana. Here we got to be smart. Does it make more sense to do the hideout, right? As we saw last time, or does it make more sense to do something like Kazandu land? Counter here with the Kazandu. Counter here with Scythe Cat Club. Go in for 8 this turn? Or does it make more sense to Kazandu hideout, which would get us here? Hideout would crack. Again, we're going to knock. My only problem with the hideout that turn is you're only going after 1 player, and what do we have the turn after it? I guess another forest. Maybe go get something off the rhythm. The only thing about the hideout is you double the counters from the Scythe Cat Club, right? That's my thought there is I guess you could also, again, let's say do the hideout. You could put the Kazandu counter on the Cub. Put Cub's counter on Tifa, and then double, right? The hideout goes off. Now you're getting a forest in tapped. Kazandu could put the counter on Cat. Cat put the counters here in doubles. And if we doubled before, I think we're at enough damage here on turn 4. And then we're setting up a nice, power fist or, something like that for next turn, which doesn't feel too bad. I think, again, what I think I'm trying to say is a lot of this is going to come down to syntax and making sure you're making the right land plays at the right time. I'm not an expert on it by any means, but I hope what I'm showing you is there's a skill gap here for you to get your lines down, right? As you get these games in and understanding when do you go in on Tifa, when do you wait, do you try to set up the right turn at the right time? Do you just raise that, that sea level and make all your creatures better? I think there's so many ways to approach Tifa. And if you've built Tifa, I'd love to know what you think down in the comment section below. Does my list good, bad? I'd love to know what you think, and I will catch you on the next one.